is Mother's Day, and we're going to talk this morning about all of the different meaningful roles women play in our lives. And to do this, we're going to look at Moses' life and examine 6 brave women who made it all possible for him. So Moses is one of the greatest leaders in biblical history. But like myself, he would have died on several occasions if it weren't for a brave, faithful, wise woman beside him. Is any other man in the same position that I'm in? So that's where Moses finds himself as well, where he would have died many times if it weren't for the faithful women that were around him. So turn to Exodus chapter 1 with me this morning, and we're going to stay there for quite a bit. We'll go through parts of Exodus 1, part of Exodus 2, part of Exodus 4. And while you're turning to Exodus chapter 1, a little bit of context about this particular book and the story that we're going to be going through. So Joseph and his brothers and their entire generation have died. But even in their passing, even in their death, Israel multiplies greatly. And so in the book of Exodus, we're going to find a new king called Pharaoh who sees these people, these Hebrew people, as a great threat to his empire. And he's worried that his kingdom will be overthrown. And so one of the first things that he does is he puts slave masters over these people to dominate them, to beat them, and to oppress them. And what's kind of interesting is that the more that they're oppressed, the more they seem to flourish and multiply. It kind of, when I was reading these passages this week, it kind of, like the way that Pharaoh tries to control and dominate them reminds me a lot of our first experience in Hawaii with centipedes. Has anyone ever lived in a country or lived in a state that has kill you type of centipedes? Okay, so I looked it up this morning. 14 and a half inches is the largest centipede that they've discovered in Hawaii. So think about a snake that's scarier with lots of crazy spiky legs, and you don't know which end bites you. So that's what it was. And when we first moved to Hawaii, we weren't totally aware that these things would be living in the house with us. And I had heard many stories from many people who gotten bit, and they had all gotten bit in their bed, in their house. And so I can tell you this, 10 years living in Hawaii, there was not one single night that I didn't strip the covers and the sheets and inspect every inch of my bed before getting in, because I was not going to be the one person, or I was not going to join the crowd that was bit in bed. So the first time Casey and I encountered a centipede, it was in our 738 square foot apartments up on a mountain, and we didn't know what it was. It looked like kind of like a small snake with a bunch of, it just crawled out from underneath the couch. We screamed. I mean, I'm sure that someone thought, listen, should we call the cops? What's going on next door? So we screamed, and then it ran back underneath the couch. Casey and I ran to the kitchen, which was about 2.5 steps from the rest of the house. We grabbed the biggest knives we could find in the kitchen, and we went on a centipede hunt. And so we were looking for it, and we lifted up the end of the couch, and it wasn't there. We went to this double-sided kind of love seat chair, and I was on one side of the couch, and so I on this chair, and I started lifting it up so that Casey could look underneath the other side. And as I lifted it up, the centipede came running in between my bare feet. Yes, exactly. Thank you. So that's what I did. I screamed. I dropped the couch almost on her head. I screamed like I was a 3-year-old, and I jumped up in the air, and I landed directly on the arms of the couch, and I broke the couch. This is 270 pounds of pastor, much higher than I can normally jump, breaks a couch. So I learned that. So I literally broke the couch arm right in half, and then the centipede disappeared once again, and we could not find it anywhere. And finally we had the love seat up on its side. And we're searching all throughout the couch trying to find this devil creature. And our couch had the little flaps, kind of like that. And we found it underneath one of those flaps. We flipped it over, and there it was. And I took that little meat cleaver and chop, and I chopped that thing right in half. And they went up into the air, and we were like cheering, and we knew we had conquered it. And then now we had 2 centipedes, and they both ran opposite ways. And we didn't know which end was the dangerous end. And so Casey went one way, I went the other way, and what was 1 centipede is now 2 centipedes, and it's going to kill us. And then 2 centipedes became 4 centipedes, and 8, and 10. And it was until there was just one leg, and it was going in circles before we felt like we had gotten a little bit safe. Have you ever tried to squash something that seems to multiply? That's kind of what I was thinking about in the beginning of the book of Exodus, where Pharaoh decides he's going to dominate these people. And the more he presses his thumb and the more he tries to squash them out, the more they seem to multiply. And so in our passage today, we're going to start in verse 15. And that's the context behind this passage that we're going to read. Verse 15. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, when you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, those are 2 rocks that would be placed for childbirth. If you see that the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it's a girl, let her live. The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. When the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, "Why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live?" And the midwives answered Pharaoh, "Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous when they give birth, and they give birth before the midwives arrive." That's quite the compliment to the Hebrew women, isn't it? Vigorous in childbirth. Verse 20. So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous, because the midwives feared God, and God gave them the families of their own. Then Pharaoh gave this order to all of his people: every Hebrew boy that is born must be thrown in the Nile, but every girl can live. So we're going to go through 6 women who were responsible for Moses being alive. And the first 2 are found here. They're the midwives. We have Shiphrah and Puah. So the king is so threatened by this centipede-like people that won't go away, and the more he presses down, they seem to multiply and gain power, that he decides he's going to kill all the boys who are born. Now, his hope is a couple of things here. Number 1, he wants to leave the Hebrew girls as servants and wives, because after all, they are vigorous in childbirth. And number 2, he wants to protect his kingdom. He wants to protect himself against a military revolt, because these Hebrew boys would grow up and eventually serve in his army. And he doesn't want those people as a Trojan horse in his army. So the king's plan might have worked if it weren't for 2 faithful women. 2 faithful midwives, Shiphrah and Puah. What's kind of interesting is that the king was so sure of his power and authority that he actually thought these midwives, who obviously loved babies, would go from delivering babies to killing them. But as he finds out, Shiphrah and Puah fear God more than they feared him. And their brave actions result in 2 different things according to the scripture here. 1, Moses is one of the babies who is spared. 2, in verse 21, it says that God blessed them and gave them families of their own. So these are the first 2 women who saved Moses' life. Now let's continue in the story. So flip to chapter 2, Exodus chapter 2. We're going to find in verses 1 through 10 the next three women. We have Moses' mother, Jochebed. We have Pharaoh's daughter, and we have Moses' older sister, Miriam. And we'll start in verse 1. And remember, as we start, in the last chapter, the king has ordered that every Hebrew boy be thrown into the Nile. Exodus chapter 2, verse 1. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him, coated it with tar and pitch, making a little boat. She placed the child in it and put it among the reeds on the bank of the Nile. His older sister, this is Miriam, stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female servant, slave, to get it. She opened it and found the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies, she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? Yes, go, she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this baby, nurse him for me, and I will pay you. So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. So the third woman in this story is Moses' mother, and she's the one who, number one, discerns that there's something special about this baby and protected him for 3 months. And when she could hide him no longer, she decides that she's going to make a basket, that she's going to make it so it floats with tar and pitch and put the baby in it, and she's going to entrust her child into the care of God. In sermon writing group this week, we talked a lot about this particular part. And it was Pastor Josh who mentioned that now that he's a father, he's realizing, and he's known for a long time, but it's different when you have kids. Wouldn't you agree? That one of the most significant battles you face as a parent is whether you parent out of faith or parent out of fear. So I asked a question on social media this week just to see what the difference is, parenting out of faith and parenting out of fear. I just want to share just a few of the stories. So one person told the story about adopting an autistic child and told about the process of learning to give everything, all of him, all of herself, to God in faith. One person spoke of learning to trust in God's biblical direction as a parent. Another person talked about the difference of parenting out of fear, which pushes people apart, and parenting out of faith, which brings people together and becomes an anchor for your soul. So Moses' mom parents out of faith, and she entrusts her baby into God's care. And because she made that decision, Moses survives, and Moses is able to become all that God wants him to be. So the fourth woman in the story is Pharaoh's daughter. Now this is, I think, one that we overlook a lot because she's part of the royal family, and it's easy to kind of write them off in a story. So she's the one who found Moses, the baby, in the Nile, and first of all, she felt sorry for him. And then second of all, it says that she recognized that he was a Hebrew baby. You realize what that means, right? She recognizes this baby was an enemy threat to her family and to her livelihood, to her father's kingdom, to her royal place. She recognizes that this baby is one that is supposed to die because we're afraid that they're going to take over our life. And even though she recognized that he was a Hebrew baby, she rescues him, she protects him, and she later adopts him. Now, it doesn't say this inside of this particular passage, but it's very safe to assume that her family would not be very happy with her, would they? I mean, she's defying a direct order from her father. And so it's a very risky move, especially for her inheritance as she grows up. But she rescues him, she protects him, she feeds him, she pays for his education, she adopts him anyway. And because of her, Moses is raised in an Egyptian royal palace. He receives a royal education, the best training and experience that the land had to offer. That's the fourth woman. The fifth woman is Moses' sister, Miriam. Now, her job was to babysit. How many of you older sisters have had to babysit before? Yeah, so, yes, that's my kid, my oldest, griping upstairs right now. So it's not a new thing. I want to let you know that, okay, that people have been watching over the siblings for a lot longer than you've been alive. So her job is to watch over her brother in the basket. And when Moses was found by the king's daughter, it was her who bravely approached the king's daughter and suggested that the baby be nursed by a Hebrew mother, which happens to be his real mother. Because of her, Moses receives the best nutrition, the best love, the best care that he could have possibly have had until it was time for him to be adopted by the royal family. And not only does Miriam play a key role in Moses' life, but she continues to play a key role in Moses' life and in Aaron's life and in the Israelites' life. And in Exodus chapter 15, verse 20, where it calls her a prophet, she's recognized as one of the essential leaders of God's people, along with Moses and Aaron. So we're going to skip to chapter 4 for the sixth woman in Moses' life. Her name is Zipporah, and it's not the same one that has the makeup store over by Chick-fil-A. It's a different one. Did I say that right? Is that the name of that makeup? Okay, I'm sorry. I felt my daughter's eyes roll back in her head so far just now. So this is Moses' first wife, Zipporah. Exodus chapter 4, we're going to go through, we'll start in verse 24. Now, I got to prepare you, parents. This is a very bizarre story. And you're about to hear some PG-13 parts of the story, okay? But it's the Bible, it's not me. Here we go. It's odd. Verse 24. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. Let's just stop for a second. Don't lose that. So the guy who has been miraculously been saved by 5 women, who God obviously has an incredible path and plan for his life. Verse 24 says, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. And then it gets weird. But Zipporah, in verse 25, took a flint knife and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it. Everyone can say ooh, it's okay. Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me, she said. So the Lord let him live. So this is an incredible story here where God is about to kill Moses. And it's his wife who recognizes Moses' disobedience in not circumcising their son like he was supposed to. He was being disobedient. And it's his wife who recognizes it and takes quick action to save Moses' life. It's his wife who recognizes the cause of God's wrath. It was her who did something about it. These 6 women in Moses' life play key roles, but here's what I want you to notice. Only one of them was his mother. I think sometimes on a day like Mother's Day, we can forget about all of the other incredible roles women play in the lives of our families and of our church. The same is true in my life. I've had many women in my life who have been influential, who have helped me. And this includes my mom, who was always there for me, who taught me to be generous and accepting and to persevere. I'm sure you can think about your mom and all the ways that she's poured into you. But in addition to my mom, I want to tell you about 3 other ladies in my life who are really responsible for me being where I'm at today. Miss Lois. Miss Lois, I've talked about before. She was a janitor about this tall. I mean, she was such a small little lady. James Bickley Elementary School in Clovis, New Mexico. And I was getting a lot of trouble at that time. This was kind of the beginning of me really struggling. I was getting in a lot of fights. And at this school, what they would do. So first of all, like you kids are not going to believe this, but in the school I was raised in, they spanked you in school. So some of you have little war wounds of that, I'm sure, before things change. But so at this school, it was really rough. And so there was one time where I got in a fight on the playground, and then they do two things after the fight. Number one, they put you in a boxing ring, and then they make you finish the fight without a crowd with rules. I don't know. I don't know. And then the second thing that they did is they gave you a choice. You get to be paddled by Mr. Bersenio, who was, in my mind, as a fifth grade kid, was a 7-foot strong Mexican man. And his paddle was behind his desk and it had holes in it. And no one wanted to be paddled by Mr. Bersenio. Or you could do a week of lunch duty. And so I always chose lunch duty because who would take that kind of a paddle? So I was for months in the janitor's area, and my responsibility would be to mop the floor after lunch when all the kids would go to recess. And I was mad, so I'd mop the floor, and she was telling me how to mop the floor, and I would finish mopping the floor, and then she would give me a reward. She'd give me a sucker. And I said, Miss Lois, I'm not sure if you understand why I'm here. I did not volunteer for this. I got in big trouble, and I was told that I have to do this for a week. And I would tell her that over and over and over. You know that I'm not supposed to be rewarded, right? I'm in trouble. And she would say, yeah, but I see the potential in you. And I can tell you in my life, 4th and 5th grade was a turning point for me. Because some janitor, who I've never spoken to since, saw the potential in a troubled kid and really changed the course of my life. The second woman was my grandma. And my grandma is probably the most generous person I've ever met in my life. And every Christmas, she owned a big secondhand store in a small farming town. And it was like 90% migrant workers and then farms. That's what this place was. And every Christmas, she would give away thousands of Christmas presents to kids. And so I would go play Santa, even as like a 10-year-old kid. I was already 6 foot and a big kid, so enough to play Santa. And I got really concerned from Grandma over the years. And I told Grandma one time, I don't know, 8, 10, or 12 or something. I told Grandma, I sat her down. I started to really understand money, and I wanted to educate her on how this worked. And so I said, listen, Grandma, you can't keep doing this for 1,000 migrant worker kids every single year. You're going to go broke. And my grandma laughed at me, and she said, oh, Robbie, that was my name at the time. She said, oh, Robbie, everything I have belongs to God, and those kids, they're God's kids. And so I learned to be generous from my grandma. The third lady was a pastor. Her name was Deanne Heisler. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. She had been planning this women's retreat for months and months and months. And so the day of the women's retreat, as like a 22-year-old pastor, I thought, I'm going to pray during the whole women's retreat, and it's going to be incredible. And so I prayed and prayed and prayed, and that next Sunday morning, I wanted to go say, I found Deanna. I said, I was praying for you the whole time. How did it go? How was women's retreat? And she said, oh, it was glorious. It was so incredible. God is so faithful in changing lives. And she went on and on and on and on and on. And then later on, I said, well, how many were there? And she said, well, 3 came, including our worship leader. In her opinion of this thing that she had poured 4 months of planning, of care, was that God brought who he needed to bring, And it was a miraculous, faithful time serving the Lord. And for me, I got to tell you, I would have been really devastated to have put so much time into something and they'll have only a couple of people show up. So from one of these ladies, I learned to see the potential in others, to look for the good in others. From one, I learned to be generous and to hold nothing back from God's kids. And from the other, I learned to be content and faithful and to acknowledge God's faithfulness even in the small things, even when it doesn't go as well as you think. So on a day like Mother's Day, I want us to recognize all the women and the important roles that you play in our lives, the sacrificing, the keeping us alive, the loving us, the pouring into us, the being an aunt and a Sunday school teacher and a mother and a grandmother and all of those different things. There are so many vital roles that women play in the life of the church. Throughout Scripture, we see God consistently placing women in leadership roles as prophets and judges and disciples and apostles. And as your pastor and as a father of 3 incredible godly girls, and as a husband of a woman who's had a dynamic and powerful ministry for a long time, I want to let all of the women and the young women, especially in the church, know that this church loves you, that we support you in leadership however God calls you. We're with you. Guys, that doesn't mean you're off the hook. It doesn't mean you're off the hook. Because I want you to know the same thing. I want you to know that we need you, that this church loves you and supports you in leadership however God calls you. We want to come beside you and to help you walk out what it looks like and figure out what it looks like to be faithful to God and how He's calling you and how He's gifted you. We need both godly men and women to step up and to show up, don't we? And I've got to tell you, I've been incredibly impressed with you guys over the past 4 weeks. Down a couple of staff members going into Palm Sunday, Good Friday, Easter, 4 days of mission convention, and you knocked it out of the park. You are people who step up and who show up and who are faithful to God in a major way. And we say thank you. Thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you. God wants to use you. And on a day like this, I thought, man, what's better than pushing aside the major figure of a story and look at all of the faithful people that are surrounding him, who made his life possible, who kept him alive, who made sure that he got to the right places and got the right training and education. I want to tell you that God wants to use you in really influential ways in the lives of others, in the church, in your community, in your family, in your neighborhood. And one of the ways that we help you figure that out was something that Pastor Josh announced earlier. It's called Growth Track. I believe we already have 8 to 10 people signed up for it, but we have as much room as people will sign up for it. And the point of that begins next Sunday, May 15th, is you spend 3 weeks. First week discovering more about the church. The second week is a blast. It's discovering your gifts, strengths, and talents, and how God has made you and formed your personality and temperament and what you have to offer. And then the third week is like a ministry fair where you hear from all the different ministries of the church, and you look at what they're saying and who God made you, and you get to sign up for things and to get plugged in. So I want to make sure that as we're saying you're faithful and you're signing up, we want all of you to be that way. I think we had over 80 volunteers for missions convention. Is that right? Over 60 different volunteers for missions convention. And every single week we have tons of volunteers that make these church services happen, midweek programs happen. And we want all of you to be plugged in. This, so you can sign up at the website, bendnaz.org, and just click on events, or you can go out to the foyer and talk to the people at the welcome desk. And we want to end this time by calling up Pastor Josh. And I think this, what he's going to bring, is a great picture of what we see happening in the book of Exodus, what we've seen happen in the years of this church, and what we've seen happen in the past few weeks as you've stepped up.
In Exodus. They don't have mics in Exodus, so we're seeing what we saw in Exodus. All right, well, I have a really unique privilege and opportunity this morning, something you will almost never see in church ministry. And that is that our expedition crew is going to be retiring and stepping down after right around 20 years of ministry to our kids. And I'm just going to have the four of you come up, please, the browns and the shorts. And we're going to do a couple of special things. Yeah, give them another hand. Give another hand. Now, they told me they didn't want much to be appreciated, but that just won't do. That just won't do. Here's the thing. They've been working with is it fourth and fifth graders or fifth and sixth graders for around 20 years. They've been planning retreats. They've been playing with these kids. How many games you probably played? Like 20,000, something like that? You can fact check me on that. But doing ministry for that long, there's a couple things that have to take place. One is that you have to overcome many challenges and many disappointments and many disheartening things in order to push through and keep loving kids and keep pouring into their lives. And the second thing is that there is a vast number of people that your lives have touched and blessed. Yes, yes, more than you know. Last year at our road trip, Jeremy had the opportunity to go with us, to be with the high school and the junior high. And it was an amazing experience for him because so many of these kids grew up and came through Expedition. And so he got to see what God's been doing in their lives and how they've grown and how they've matured in their faith and their worship. And I hope that you remember, and they all remember, that you played a big role in that for all of their lives. And so to appreciate them, we wanted to give them a bouquet, but what is an appropriate bouquet for someone who works with young people, right? Yeah, what do we do? So we have something, and people are forward. So here's your bouquet, one per couple, and this is what we're going to do. I'm going to have the ladies start passing out suckers because you're going to help me make this bouquet for them. So appropriate bouquet for people working with young people is suckers, we think. So we have all sorts of different suckers. We have Dum-Dums. We have Tootsie Pops. We have all of them. And if you have ever been impacted by Expedition, if you've been in it, if you've had a kid in it, if you've had a grandkid in it, or if the shorts or the browns have impacted your life at all, or encouraged you, or prayed for you, or been part of a community group with you, or had any kind of impact on your life, we're going to play a song. You have as long as you need. I want you to grab a sucker, come up front, or grab two suckers and put one in each of their bouquets, and just give them a wink, give them a high five, give them a hug, and just quickly tell them how much you appreciate them. And then after the service, that's the time when you can share stories or give them a longer hug or hang out with them. We are going to really do our best to show them how much we love them. Just a small, small token of our appreciation compared to what they've done for us and our kids. But if you guys would just come down here to the front step, just stand on that front step. We're going to start the music and start passing out suckers, and you guys can come appreciate them.
If you ever find yourself stuck in the middle of the sea, I'll sail the world to find you. If you ever find yourself lost in the dark and you can't see, I'll be the light to guide you. Find out what we're made of when we are called to help our friends in need. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh, yeah, yeah. If you're tossing and you're turning and you just can't fall asleep, I'll sing a song beside you. And if you ever forget how much you really mean to me, every day I will remind you. Oh, find out what we're made of when we are called to help our friends in need. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. That's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh, ooh. You can count on me 'cause I can count on you. If you ever find yourself stuck in the middle of the sea, I'll sail the world to find you. If you ever find yourself lost in the dark and you can't see, I'll be the light to guide you. Find out what we're made of when we are called to help our friends in need. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do.
All right, hold on, guys. Hold on. Don't leave yet. Somebody said they hadn't aged in 20 years. So well done. It's made their week. Well, I do have one more gift for you guys. So this is just a very small token of our appreciation from the church, so you guys can have a nice date and go to dinner. So will you give them one more big round of applause? Thank you so much, you guys. That's awesome. All right. Well, just real quickly, I want to talk about where we go from here with our kids ministry. And the plan is that we're going to launch kind of a new middle school that's going to incorporate 6th through 8th grade.